This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hello, welcome to Strong Sense of Place.
In each episode, we focus on one destination and discuss what makes it different than any other place on Earth.
Then we recommend 5 books we love that took us there on the page.
I'm Melissa Joelwan.
I'm David Humphreys.
We're going around the world, one great read at a time.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Strong Sense of Place. Today we get curious about New York City. In Two Truths and a Lie, I'm going to tell you about a store in Brooklyn where you can buy a can of chutzpah.
No.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about 5 books we love.
I'm recommending a midlife coming-of-age story that will make you laugh, then turn around and kick you in the teeth. In a good way.
I've got a book that led me to another book that I wish I'd read first.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they're both great. But first, Mel's going to bring us up to speed with the New York City 101.
I don't want to start out by being too United States centric.
Yeah.
But I do wonder where you'd have to go in the world to find someone who hasn't heard of New York City.
Yes.
So I thought we would start with a few facts about the city known as the Big Apple,
Yep.
Gotham, and the city that never sleeps.
Its spinning tempo carries on into the dawn. New York, the Wonder City.
New York is the most populous city in the United States.
Yeah.
With about 8 million people, give or take.
The population of New York City alone exceeds 39 U.S. states.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The city was formed in 1898 by consolidating the 5 boroughs. Those are Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, and Manhattan.
Yeah.
It has one of the world's largest natural harbors, and Manhattan is surrounded by 3 rivers, the Hudson, the East River, and the Harlem, which means bridges.
Yes.
Iconic bridges.
Yeah, really beautiful, iconic bridges.
You've got the Gothic Brooklyn Bridge.
Yep.
The double-decker Manhattan Bridge.
Yep.
The George Washington Bridge, which is one of the busiest bridges in the world. And the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which you may know from the 1970s movie Saturday Night Fever, where the hooligans went running around on the girders of the bridge, and it was very literally a symbol of the path to a better, more exciting life.
When I was a kid, my roommate and I stood on the George Washington Bridge one afternoon welcoming people to New York City.
Nerds.
Yeah.
New York City is the financial capital of the world.
Sure.
The stock exchange was founded under a buttonwood tree on Wall Street in 1792.
Oh, so quaint.
That got really out of control.
It really got out of control.
If New York City were its own country, it would be the 10th largest economy.
That's impressive.
And I present the following factoid without comment.
Okay.
New York is home to the highest number of billionaires and millionaires of any city in the world.
Yeah, a lot of money in the city.
To me, and I think a lot of people, what makes New York such a special place is the melting pot of cultures.
Yeah.
Ellis Island was the primary immigration entry point to the U.S. between 1892 and 1954. There are currently about 3.1 million expats in New York City.
Wow.
That's the largest foreign-born population in any world city. And they speak about 800 different languages.
Hello. Namaste. Sayonara.
Arrivederci.
So it's one of the most linguistically diverse cities, probably in the history of the world.
That's amazing.
I know, it makes it seem so magical.
I mean, it kind of is.
It is. And then also when you're walking down the street, you're like, oh, sidewalk juice. Okay.
Yes, all of those things are true.
But also you get coffee in those little we're happy to serve you cups.
That is sort of a lesser New York magic trick, but...
I mean, it's one of my favorites. Music, food, art, fashion, storytelling, theater. They all benefit from stirring together cultures from around the globe.
Yeah.
And New York is a fantastic hub for all of those things.
Yes.
We already talked a lot about New York City culture in previous episodes, so I will put links in show notes to our episodes about theater, museum, and library because they have lots of good stories about New York in them. Now, I will attempt to romp through New York City history in about 3 minutes.
Oh.
Can she do it?
Set your clock. Yeah, let's go.
Oh gosh, don't time me. The first inhabitants were the Lenape Native Americans. Then the Dutch showed up. They established the settlement of New Amsterdam in 1624. But 2 years later, it was captured by the British, who renamed it New York after the Duke of York. If you've seen the musical Hamilton, you know New York was the U.S. capital in the late 1700s and home to the $10 founding father.
Who got a lot farther by working a lot harder, by being smarter, by being a self-starter.
By 14, they placed him in charge of a trading charter.
They should cast us.
Big jump now to the 19th century. New York was defined by two opposing forces, waves of immigration from Europe and the richy rich dudes of the Gilded Age. Gentlemen like Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, and J.P. Morgan. To their credit, some of them built stuff that made the U.S. better. Landmarks like the Empire State Building and Rockefeller Center, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the New York Public Library were all built in this period. Shout out to J.P. Morgan for hiring Belle DaCosta Green, a Black woman, to be the director of his library on Madison Avenue in 1905. Very cool.
I always feel a little weird about Save Your Billionaires, but still appreciate the New York Public Library and the Brooklyn Bridge and the other things you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Next up, the Harlem Renaissance. The 1920s kicked off with an explosion of the arts that started in Harlem. There were new styles of painting and photography. Writers like Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, and W.E.B. Du Bois explored the African-American experience. And then musicians like Bessie Smith,
25 cents? Ha! No, I wouldn't pay 25 cents to go in nowhere. 'Cause listen, yeah, up in Harlem every Saturday
Ella
night.
Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington,
Yeah.
and Louis Armstrong got everyone jumping to jazz.
On the right, dear. Now that my keys back in time.
100% would like to time travel back to the Cotton Club and the Savoy Ballroom in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Since we still haven't built a time machine,
Yep.
I will say the Metropolitan Museum of Art right now has an exhibit about the Harlem Renaissance running through July 28th. And they have two excellent things you can enjoy online if you can't get to New York right now. There's a 30-minute video tour of the exhibit with a museum curator and a podcast called Harlem is Everywhere. I'll put the links in the show notes.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really well done. The snazzy jazz era came to an abrupt end with the Great Depression in 1929 and Prohibition.
Yeah.
Then World War II, which I'll be talking about when we get to books. Then things turned around with a post-war boom.
Sure. A little bit. Yep.
Then you get disco and punk in the 70s.
Yep.
The greed is good 80s. Grungy 90s. And then the cleanup of Times Square and the sort of Disneyfication of that whole situation.
And we can't forget 9/11 and its huge impact on the city and the rest of the world.
There are far too many fun ways to slice and dice a visit to New York. You could focus on street food or immerse yourself in theater.
Sure.
You could go all in on legendary department stores.
Yeah.
Visit the most beautiful Art Deco buildings. But today, I thought I'd share some ideas about how to spend a fun bookish day in the city.
Oh, that's nice.
I have 2 disclaimers.
Okay.
First, this is purely subjective and what I can talk about in the time I'm allotted here. Otherwise, we'd be here for days on end.
Yeah, of course. New York City is enormous and there's much to do.
There are somewhere around 250 bookstores alone.
Yeah.
So this is an open invitation to join us on Substack, where we will continue the discussion of bookish things you can do in New York City. These are just some ideas to get you started. And second, this is a little bit fantasy because I haven't included annoying things like the realities of time, space, and traffic.
Okay.
The day must start with a bagel and cream cheese.
Oh, all right.
This is non-negotiable for me.
All right.
And I chose Essa Bagel. It was founded in 1976 by an Austrian family. The name means eat a bagel in Yiddish. And I can confirm that their everything bagels with scallion cream cheese are dreamy. Good news.
Yep.
If you can't get to New York right now, they have free shipping everywhere in the United States. So
Oh.
you can get delivery from Essa Bagel right now, solving all of your bagel emergencies.
Nice.
After breakfast, we're off to the Morgan Library and Museum.
The Morgan Library and Museum is a lot of things to a lot of different people. It's a museum, it's a research center, it's an event venue, it's an educational space, it's a place for contemplation, and it's a place to even just grab a bite for lunch.
This is the aforementioned J.P. Morgan Library.
Yep.
It's 2 stories, and for me, it's the quintessential fancy library. It's infused with golden light. There are frescoes on the ceilings, Persian rugs on the floor, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. They also have cases with special stuff in them sitting around, like a Gutenberg Bible or a first edition of Charles Dickens. They also have the largest collection of manuscripts by Anne Bronte.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
You might want to put a note on your calendar, book friends. Next fall, the Morgan is celebrating their 100th birthday with a special exhibit about Belle de Costa Green. It begins in October and runs for several months, so that seems like a really good time to visit New York.
New York in the fall is fantastic.
It really is. They also do a good job of putting things online, so if you can't get there physically, I'm sure they will have part of the exhibit online. Our next stop is the New York Public Library for their free daily 1-hour tour that highlights the history, architecture, and collections. When we went on it, I was delighted to see that they took us into the Rose main reading room.
Yeah.
It kind of has that surreal feeling of like, am I in a movie? Because you're in this room that you've seen so many times.
And don't forget the gift shop. They have a really nice gift shop there.
They have a fantastic gift shop with kind of vintage-inspired jewelry and amazing books about New York.
And a lot of sort of stationery items, pens and papers and journals. Tote bags. And stickers. I have a sticker on my microphone case.
Before we head to Brooklyn for lunch, it's almost time for lunch. We're making a quick stop at the indie bookstore, P&T Knitwear.
Doesn't sound like a bookstore.
The story of the name of this bookstore is so good. It was started by a gentleman named Bradley Tusk, and he named the bookshop to honor his grandfather. In the 1950s, his granddad emigrated to New York after surviving the Holocaust. And when he got there, he opened a sweater store called P&T Knitwear with a friend he met in a refugee camp in Germany. So when Bradley Tusk decided to open his bookshop, he wanted to name it P&T Knitwear, even though everyone had the same reaction you did.
Yeah.
It's a great store. They have, of course, excellent books.
Yeah.
A community podcast studio, an event space, and a cafe. And they also every year award the Gotham Book Prize to a work set in New York City. I will also say they're very nice people. I've had a lot of email exchanges with them, and they're just lovely.
That's so nice.
And now to Brooklyn.
Okay.
We're grabbing a slice of pepperoni pizza with hot honey at Paulie G's Slice Shop.
Paulie G's.
Do you remember?
I do. I lived in New York for a bit, and I have a lot of sort of favorite slice shops, but Paulie G's also has sort of a special place in my heart just for being delicious and also right next to Word.
Which is our next stop, the Word bookstore.
Yeah.
So I have a story to tell about Word.
Okay.
We were on a trip to the United States. We were literally on our way to the airport when we stopped at Pauly G's for a slice, and we thought we'll just pop into Word for a minute. My suitcase was stuffed. It was very heavy. We were on the end of like a 13-day trip.
Yep.
And we were on our way to the airport. This is not optimal shopping.
Yeah.
And I saw a book on the front table that I thought would be great for our restaurants episode. And I always feel uncomfortable taking pictures or writing down the name of a book in a bookshop because I don't want them to think that I'm doing that so I can just go buy it somewhere cheaper.
Right.
So I didn't write it down because I thought, I will remember that.
Mm.
And then I got home and of course, I did not remember that.
Right.
So I took a flyer and I sent an email to Word out of the blue and said, I was in your shop 3 weeks ago on my way to the airport with a heavy suitcase and I saw a book. I don't remember the title. I don't remember what was on the cover, but it was on the table in the front of the store. I think it was about a waiter or a maitre d' in a fancy restaurant.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a hotel. Can you help? And that same day,
Yeah.
I got an email back that said, it sounds like you're thinking of The Waiter by Matthias Faltbakken. Hope this helps, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
That's really nice.
And that was 100% correct, and it was a great book, and I talked about it in our restaurants episode. And from that moment on, Word became my bookstore in New York.
We have used Word to send books to our patrons many times now, and they are always delightful to deal with. They're enthusiastic and friendly and detail-oriented, and I just have all the appreciation in the world for those guys.
I feel like they're very patient with us too, because we're like, oh, and by the way, can you also print out this thing and put it in the package?
Yes. Like frequently I will send them a box of C's to break up and distribute among many shipments, and then also print out this PDF. And would color be too much trouble? And pack it in there and send it to these 25 people. And they are always very obliging, and I appreciate them humoring me.
I can't wait to go see them and eat some pepperoni pizza with hot honey.
100%.
I mean, you guys, the like little tiny pools of beautiful orange grease that accumulate on the surface of the pizza when you get pepperoni mix with the sweet, spicy honey. And when you put it in your mouth, it's like a big party.
Also, it's too loud in there, which I usually find off-putting, and somehow I find endearing in this particular place.
I was looking at their website the other day,
Yeah.
and it says, we are a music-forward pizza shop.
They are.
And I was like, oh, that explains that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it is just slightly too loud in here. But I'm old, so what do I know? Okay, now we've got our books in hand from our 2 bookshops.
Yep.
Our bellies are full.
Yes.
Time for a cocktail.
Oh, nice.
We're going back to Manhattan
Okay.
for a very dry martini at Bemelman's Bar in the Carlyle Hotel. To some people, the name Bemelman might be familiar. Ludwig Bemelman is the author and illustrator of the Madeline books about the little girl at the boarding school in Paris.
You're right.
When the bar opened in the Carlyle in 1940, he was hired to paint murals on the walls. So when you go in there, Madeline and her friends and elephants and rabbits and other animals are kind of frolicking around Central Park. It is so charming. And then after our drink, we're heading back to our super awesome hotel, the Library Hotel.
Oh, nice.
It has 10 floors, and each one is dedicated to a category of the Dewey Decimal System. So you can get a room on the history floor or math and science.
Reference.
If you choose the 8th floor, that's literature. And when you make your reservation, you can tell them your top 3 picks for what category of literature you would like. So you could have the fairy tale room, or classic fiction, or erotic literature. The hotel has 6,000 books, and they are shelved in the rooms according to their Dewey number. And the Do Not Disturb sign says, shh, please let me read. Their restaurant bar has cozy reading nooks, literary cocktails, and truffle popcorn.
I could not be more interested in that hotel.
Yeah.
After staying up too late reading,
Yep.
we're going to get up the next morning and go for an early stroll along the Literary Walk in Central Park. It is lined with a bunch of literary statues. I have two favorites. First, there's this really cute sculpture of Hans Christian Andersen reading his book, The Ugly Duckling, to a cute duck.
That's nice.
And there's a monument to the characters from Alice in Wonderland with giant mushrooms that you can climb on.
Yeah.
So I think we get a cup of coffee in one of those we're happy to serve you cups.
Yep.
We park our butts on a bench with a book and enjoy a little al fresco reading.
Love it.
The end. That's our literary day in New York City.
That's awesome. I look forward to doing that.
Every bit of it.
Are you ready for Two Truths and a Lie?
I will do my best.
These are two truths and a lie.
I'm about to say three statements. Two of them are true. Mel doesn't know which one is the lie. Here's the first statement. There's a superhero supply store in Brooklyn.
That made me perk my ears up.
This next one requires a little setup. So the musical Phantom of the Opera opened on Broadway in July of 1988 and closed just last year.
Wow.
In April 2023.
Holy cow.
That is 35 years or more than 13,000 performances. Here's the statement. At least one musician played in Phantom for the entire 35-year run. And the third statement. There's a burlesque dancer in Brooklyn. She has an entire act centered around books and literature. Her stage name is Paige Turner.
I want that to be true.
All right, so one at a time.
Yeah.
The first one, there's a superhero supply store in Brooklyn.
I mean, yes, I'm saying that's true.
That is true. There's a storefront in Park Slope with a very handsome sign out front. You can go there and buy a cape and a mask and a utility belt and gloves. X-ray glasses are available. They also cater to villains, so you can buy a catapult or a chemistry set for your nefarious deeds.
I feel like you really looked me in the eyes when you said they cater to villains.
I thought it would be appealing.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah. They will also sell you a can of superpowers. You can buy omnipotence or muscle or chutzpah or gratitude. I've also heard that there's an invisibility testing center there, but I haven't been able to confirm that. That all started in San Francisco. Author Dave Eggers, you might know him from his book, A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. And a teacher friend of his, Nenevi Clements Caligari, wanted to open a writing program for young people there. But the building they liked was zoned for retail. So they opened up the Pirate Supply store. And that store, of course, stocks compasses and telescopes and skeleton keys and so on. They have pirate supplies in the front and a writing program in the back.
Sneaky pirates.
Yeah. The writing program, it's called 826 Valencia, after the address of the pirate supply, did well enough that it had expanded. When it got to Brooklyn, it became a superhero supply store. When it got to London, it became a monster supply store. The supply stores engage the community and inspire young writers, and the sales keep the programs free for students and their families.
I want to go to all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. 826 Valencia has since become the largest youth writing network in the United States and has spread globally. And if you want to know more, we'll point to it in our show notes. Okay, statement number 2. At least one musician played in Phantom for the entire 35-year run.
That sounds true, but I don't want to say true because I want the burlesque dancer Paige Turner to be true, but I think that that's probably true. So true.
Okay, so let me paint you a picture. Way back in 1987, 27 musicians were hired to be the orchestra for the Phantom of the Opera. The contract those people signed had a run-of-show agreement, which said, in effect, as long as the show is going, you have a job here.
That seems like that would be a really good thing for a working musician to have.
Yes. That's fantastic, right? Reliable employment can take a lot of work to come by for musicians or for anybody else. One of the horn players says he remembers hearing that and thinking that maybe the show would run for 5 years, and that would be great. The experience of doing that show is intense. The orchestra pit barely fits the 27 musicians. They are elbow to elbow down there. A string player said you can barely turn around without knocking something over.
That would drive me insane.
Yes. And they are there for the 2.5-hour runtime of that show, 8 shows a week.
Wow.
One of the musicians described it as being very Groundhog Day. It's the same show, of course. Every minute of that 2.5-hour show is the exact minute it was the night before. Mm-hmm. But also, people associated with the show, the cast and crew, tend to do the same things. They set up for the evening in the same way. They go to the bathroom at the same time. They eat at the same time, frequently with the same people. They say the same things. You were great last night. Good show, everyone. There's a bit during Phantom where an actor comes into the orchestra pit and fires a gun. And the smell was the same and lasted the same amount of time. Every performance, 8 shows a week after week. And every little thing that everybody does can make somebody else go crazy a little bit, right? Somebody might smell funny or eat something weird or say something over and over and over. After a while, one of the musicians started using blinders to block out the rest of the orchestra.
The wall is up.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And after a while of that, there's a bit of dissociation.
Sure.
Musicians described having moments where they weren't sure what was happening or what day it was or where they were. Did I just play the right thing? Mm-hmm. One of the string players described himself as, quote, a violin operator. He had no emotional connection to the work. Some of the musicians got a little resentful of Phantom. One of them said about doing another performance, quote, there's almost a feeling of nausea, a physical sensation that I'm literally jumping out of my skin.
Oh, no.
Yeah. There was a substitute musician, who called the whole thing a horror show. So the years come and go, right? During the run, there were Phantom babies who grew into adults.
Sure.
Something I read said there were 3 deaths in the string section alone. One of the musicians used his time in the show to teach himself multiple languages.
Wow.
Yeah. Ultimately, of the 27 musicians who started in 1987, 11 of them were still there when the show closed in 2023. Wow. Yeah. I can only imagine what it was like for those people to walk out of that theater for the last time. If you're curious, the base pay for a musician at Phantom was about $290 a performance, and that works out to a little over $115,000 a year.
That's also not bad pay for 5 hours a day.
Yeah, right. You can probably do something else.
But it's 6 days a week.
So the third statement we have already identified is false.
Page Turner is also true. Hooray!
The statement was there's a burlesque dancer in Brooklyn. She has an act centered around books and literature. Her stage name is Page Turner.
And she's coming over to our house next week for dinner.
So I made that up, but the truth is better.
Okay.
There was a recurring show at a small theater in Manhattan called Books and Burlesque. Every show pairs authors with burlesque dancers. The authors read, and the dancers perform an act based on the reading.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. There's music with the reading. There's a backdrop. There are costumes. A bookstore shows up with signed copies for purchase. The show was started by a woman whose stage name is Fortune Cookie.
Cute.
She said she wanted to figure out how to build a new audience for the art of burlesque and to encourage her burlesque and drag friends to find books that would resonate with them.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. If you're listening to this on release day, the next performance is in 2 days on Sunday the 9th. And if you're far from Manhattan, you can watch it on a live stream for a mere $10. Readers will include Vanessa Chan reading from her debut novel, The Storm We Made, and Annie Leontis reading from her memoir, Sex with a Brain Injury on Concussion and Recovery. Performers include Rosie Tulips, Professor M, and Fortune Cookie herself. A good time is guaranteed for all. That's 2 truths and a lie.
There are many ways to entice a potential new customer with flashy branding and calculated marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, the success of a business comes down to the ability to close the sale. And for businesses like Thrive Cosmetics, Allbirds, or Skims, it's what goes on behind the scenes, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple that makes the difference. For them and for millions of businesses, that difference is made with Shopify. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Because if your goal is growth, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And Shopify will make sure you're ready. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And with Shop Pay, they boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. It's no wonder Shopify is home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/realm.
Here we are coming down from above with a bad attitude and 5 books we love. I'm going to hit it real hard. Get out my fighting gloves, because I love a good read from 5 books we love.
Book 1.
My first recommendation is Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan. If you were going to slap a label on this novel, it would probably be historical fiction.
Okay.
It's set in the 1930s and 40s, New York City, and it has a very strong sense of place and time. But it's also a family drama, gangster noir, a workplace story, and a wartime adventure, all centered around a heroine that is very spirited and obstinate.
That's a lot of things.
It is a lot of things, and Jennifer Egan weaves them all together really well. This is mostly the story of Anna Kerrigan and her relationship with her father, Eddie. There are lots of other people we meet along the way as she grows from a scrappy 12-year-old to an adult woman who has seen some things. But the bond between her and her dad is the one that drives all of the action. When we meet Anna, it's 1934, and she's a precocious preteen. She's in the car with her dad, and they're driving to Manhattan Beach. This is not an unusual occurrence. She often joins him for his work, which is kind of mysterious. There's a lot of driving around and talking to people. Sometimes he picks things up. Sometimes he drops things off.
Okay.
But today feels different to her, and she doesn't know why.
Yeah.
And then from there, we kind of jump into Eddie's history. And it's a classic American dream sort of story. He had a very difficult childhood, and he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and he used his smarts to build a good life for himself. He married a beautiful girl who was a dancer, and she loves him as much as he loves her. He had money and respectability, and things were going their way, and then the stock market crashed. So now it's 5 years later, and they are just scraping by. And Eddie, as you may have guessed, is working on the fringe of the criminal underworld. But he didn't turn crooked out of greed. He needs the money to take care of his family, specifically to buy a special wheelchair for his other daughter who's disabled. So there's all these family and gangster-related balls in the air.
Yeah.
And then we flash forward to 1941. Anna is now 19. She's working at the Brooklyn Naval Yard, and her dad has disappeared.
Oh.
Did he go on the lam? Is he dead? We don't know. And neither does she.
Okay.
And at this point, she's not even sure that she cares anymore. She has hardened her heart to the whole situation.
Oh.
Because now she's the financial support for herself, her disabled sister, and her mom. And the war is on.
Right. This is a dark picture you're painting.
It is dark, but it's a little noirish, so it doesn't feel super heavy. It feels more on the adventure, intrigue side of things.
Okay.
And at this point in the story, I feel like it really takes flight and it becomes a World War II novel.
So all of that was kind of Act 1.
Yes.
All right.
One of the things I really enjoyed about this is that I've read a lot of World War II fiction, and it's usually set in Europe. This is a story of what was happening in the United States for the people who were there during the war.
Yeah.
And that time was full of contrasts. There's the anything goes attitude of the nightclubs versus the social rules that still exist about what a good girl does and doesn't do.
Mm-hmm.
There were opportunities for women to work at jobs usually held by men, but there was also lingering discrimination against them because they're women.
Sure.
There was a lot of, isn't it cute the way girls are doing this stuff now?
Yeah.
Sort of attitude.
Yeah.
And the theme of the tenuousness of wartime also comes up a lot. I kept thinking of that airport meme, the one that says the airport is a lawless place.
Yeah.
7 a.m., drink a beer. Tired? Sleep on the floor. Hungry? Chips now cost $17.
Yeah.
And thinking about wartime is
Right.
kind of like that.
Right.
Like you're living in this dangerous, unknowable present and you can't count on the future and you just have right now and it's weird.
Yeah. I mean, 2020 was a little like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So Anna is very aware that eventually her situation is going to change. The war is going to end, the men are going to come home, and what is her life going to be then?
Yeah.
As the book says, her life was a war life. The war was her life because she came of age when that was all happening.
Right.
When we meet her as a 12-year-old, there are hints of a wild streak and stubborn grit immediately. And 19-year-old Anna has taken all of that and turned into a formidable person. She's got a really boring job inspecting ship parts at the naval yard, which internally she's rebelling against all the time. And she becomes convinced that she should be a civilian diver. She sees the divers in the river working on the ships. They don't let women do that kind of thing, but she's not going to give up.
Okay.
The bits about the diving teams were my favorite parts of this story. The author, Jennifer Egan, uses all 5 senses to describe the waterfront and the ships, the camaraderie that grows between the people working there, and also the competition. There's a lot of difficult feelings for men who are still working there because they're not overseas fighting in the war.
Right.
And now they're working with girls.
Yeah.
And all of that really came alive. I felt like I was dropped into the cold, dark water of the East River in this 200-pound suit. It's so good. And I really cared about Anna. She is difficult. And she does some things where I was just like, girl, no. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And she meets all of these really interesting people, and they're all very well drawn. So you are really invested in what happens to them too. Eventually, all of the plot points and the characters' experiences converge in a very satisfying way. And the ending was 5 stars.
That sounds awesome.
Also delightful to me is the story of how Jennifer Egan came to write this book. During a fellowship at the New York Public Library, she learned for the first time about the big part that New York City's waterfront had played in the war effort. I didn't know anything about that either. It's really fascinating. And then she found a wartime correspondence between a man and woman who met while working at the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
Wow, that's cool.
And then, this is the most amazing part, she went to visit the yard with the now 90-year-old man who wrote the letters. She also got to try on the 200-pound diving suit. And she met a woman named Andrea Motley Crabtree. I'm telling you her whole name because she is a badass. Andrea Motley Crabtree. She was the first female U.S. Army deep sea diver and the first Black female deep sea diver in any U.S. military branch.
Wow.
I'll put links about her in the show notes. She is a force of nature, and she inspired the firecracker character of Anna in Manhattan Beach. That's Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan.
And now book 2.
My first book is Laser Rider 2 by Tamara Shopson.
I really wanted to read that. You stole it from my TBR.
It's a great read. Laser Rider 2 is historical fiction that I have lived through. It's about the time after computers were invented, but before they were obvious and everywhere. It's a little hard to remember now, but there was a brief shining window in the development of the computers between like mainframes and the iPhone where computers were cool, but not everybody knew yet.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with the internet at almost the same time. There's this little bright moment where early adopters have gotten a hold of a thing and are exploring the new tool and what can I make with this? And at least for me, it was a very exciting time. You can use computers to edit music. That's amazing. What's that like? And you can do darkroom manipulation of an image, this thing, the process that took a room.
You could make zines
Yeah.
and print them out instead of making them on a photocopier.
Yeah. I mean, all of that was stuff we take for granted now that was miraculous at the time. And similarly with the internet, right? Wikipedia was a thing that existed as an idea, a worldwide, commonly available encyclopedia that's editable by everyone. And 10 minutes before it happened, it was crazy science fiction.
Right.
And then it happened, and now we get on to the next set of problems, right? But this book takes place in that liminal moment of magic. It's a coming-of-age story for both our lead character, 19-year-old Claire, and the industry itself. In the first chapter or so of this book, Claire gets a job at a place called TechServe. It's the mid-90s. TechServe is a computer repair place. It's a little haven for people who are in love with computers. TechServe was a real place.
Oh.
Yeah. It had several locations, but all of the locations were along 23rd Street. It was started and operated by a bunch of fuzzy, brilliant weirdos. The book really skates the line between fiction and nonfiction. There are real people described here. Steve Buscemi makes an appearance. So do the people who founded TechServe. And then there's a layer of characters who I think are fictional. Pretty sure. This is one of those books where sort of nothing happens and everything happens. There's a read of this story where Claire gets a job, learns some things, and then moves on. But for me, the book was just a really good reminder of a specific time. It's a portrait of New York City as a cultural hub and a place of invention and renewal. The book is strong with the idea of people who go to New York City looking to figure out what to do with their time and then learn some things and move on, either in New York City or elsewhere. It is a story of hope, even when you're not entirely sure what you might be hoping for. So this is not the only story that the author Tamara Shopson has told about New York City. She was raised in a cafe run by her family. It's called Shopson's. It is still on the Lower East Side, not too far from Katz's. Her father, Kenny Shopson, was famously eccentric. He had rules for his diner.
Oh, I love a diner with rules.
One of the rules was that you couldn't copy another person's order. You cannot say, yeah, me too. No.
Amazing.
That will get you a rant from her father and possibly an eviction from the restaurant. He also had a firm rule about one child per adult. If you had 2 kids and you were alone, you had to eat somewhere else. When Kenny Shopson died in 2017, the New York Times wrote an obituary for him. And one of the pieces in that was this. Mr. Shopson didn't like publicity or being listed in diners' guides because, he said, such attention had the annoying effect of attracting customers. His was a classic neighborhood restaurant, and he didn't want it to become a tourist attraction. He was not averse to throwing someone out who didn't seem to get the chatty, casual clutter look and feel of the place. Quote, by kicking them out, what I'm doing is respecting the fact that they don't belong here. He explained.
So New York-y.
It's just maybe the most New York thing that anyone has ever said. Kenny and his wife Eve raised 5 kids out of that cafe.
So if they went to eat there, they couldn't all stay.
There is a picture of the 7 of them in the restaurant. Tamara wrote about her experience there in a book called Arbitrary Stupid Goal, which is a fantastic title. And had I known about that book, I would have read that one first. I expect it's an entirely different ride into the New York City of our recent past and probably just as lovely. But the book I started with, it's called Laser Rider 2. I found it lighthearted and sweet. If you're curious about taking a nostalgia ride into the New York of the mid-90s, this might be your book. It's Laser Rider 2 by Tamara Shopson.
Now, book 3.
My second recommendation is Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. This is a midlife coming-of-age story set in 2017 Brooklyn and Puerto Rico. The story revolves around Olga and her brother Prieto. Olga is 40 years old, very single, and a wedding planner for the ultra-rich. She is on track to be the Puerto Rican Martha Stewart. Wealthy women on New York's Upper East Side, Dallas, Palm Beach, and Silicon Valley get to feel very smug by telling their friends their wedding planner is the one from TV. Olga's brother is equally successful, although in an entirely different way. He's a congressman for their Latinx neighborhood, and ostensibly, he's trying to smooth out the bumps of gentrification.
Okay.
But Pietro has some secrets. So, the two of them are the immigrant dream. They were one of the first Puerto Rican families to live in their previously mostly white neighborhood, and they have done very well for themselves. Except they are still reckoning with their past.
Oh.
Their mom, she was more devoted to political activism than motherhood. 27 years ago, she left them in the capable and loving hands of their grandmother and extended family. And then a few years later, their father, who was a troubled Vietnam vet, died from AIDS.
Oh.
So they're carrying some emotional baggage.
Yeah.
And I got to say, their mom is a real piece of work. After she skipped out, they had no way to get in touch with her. But she has sent them nagging letters over the years filled with criticism and judgment. So she has been keeping tabs on them, but they have no way to reach her.
That seems unfair.
Yeah, she's terrible.
Yeah.
Also, this book tricked me. The opening pages are a very fizzy, funny dissertation on wedding napkins. It's like 2 pages on wedding napkins. And it's a really good setup for the tone of the story and a peek into Olga's character. I want to read you just a little bit.
Okay.
The telltale sign that you are at the wedding of a rich person is the napkins. At the not rich person's wedding, should a waiter spill water or wine or a mixed drink of well liquor onto the napkin-covered lap of a guest, the beverage would beat up and roll off the cheap square of polyblend fabric, down the guest's legs, eventually pooling on the hideous, overly busy patterned carpet designed and chosen specifically to mask these such stains.
I've been to that wedding.
Mm-hmm. At the rich person's wedding, however, the napkins are made of a European linen fine enough for a Tom Wolfe suit. Should the waiter spill any of the luxury bottled water, vintage wine, or custom-crafted cocktails, the napkin would, dutifully, absorb any moisture before the incident could irritate a couture-clad guest. The rich person's wedding also never features hideous carpet. Not because the venue might not have had one, but because they had the money to cover it over with hardwood flooring, black and white Havana-inspired tiles, or even actual grass. While Olga Isabel Acevedo's job required her to worry about all of these elements and more, the present moment found her primarily concerned with the napkins. Mainly, how she could steal them when the party was over.
Oh, twist.
Right?
Yeah.
That last sentence, you're like, wait, what? Olga has depths. So for me, this book recreates the experience of what it's like to meet someone new, right? When you first meet them, you get the public version, the charming one, the one they've cultivated, and you learn about their accomplishments, you hear about their work. Then they slowly reveal more of themselves. Maybe they show a little vulnerability.
Yeah.
They advance and retreat as you're doing this dance of getting to know each other. And eventually,
you've heard their whole backstory, and now you actually know them.
Yeah.
You understand them, and you love them for real, or you don't. That's this book. And it's not just Olga, it's every character.
Oh.
Except maybe her mom. Her mom is terrible all the way down. But it's this slow process of peeling back the layers of each of the characters so that you understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. This story successfully weaves a lot of different elements, and there is a lot of plot happening, but the plot is very character-driven. There's commentary on the immigrant experience and gentrification and colonialism. This has the best explanation I've ever read about the relationship between the U.S. and Puerto Rico.
Oh, all right.
And how that was exacerbated by the response to Hurricane Maria in 2017. Whew, boy, that was rough.
Yeah.
It's also about siblings and longing and what we need to feel successful. Everyone in this book is striving for something. Even their mom, who I keep saying is terrible, is driven by her political goals and her narcissism, but also political.
Yeah.
It has a very strong sense of Brooklyn. Olga goes on a date to a neighborhood bar that has just a fantastic jukebox. And I hope that bar exists, and I would very much like to find it. There's also a big family wedding that is the polar opposite of the kind of weddings Olga plans. Her big Puerto Rican family has this wedding. Wow.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. Stuff goes down at the wedding. This story also hits every note of the emotional scale. There's surprise and joy and tenderness and anger. There's some romance. Every time they got a letter from their mom, I got so angry my cheeks got hot.
Wow.
It made me laugh so many times. The family in particular is really amusing. And then the ending is just perfect. In an interview, the author Xochitl Gonzalez said that this book is a love letter to Brooklyn, where she grew up, and her Puerto Rican culture. She also said that when she was a kid, her family didn't have a lot of money and they couldn't afford books. So she didn't own her own book until college.
Wow.
She has a very soft spot for libraries because she says that she traveled around the world through books at the library around the corner from her house. And she name dropped Jane Eyre. So I'm pretty sure we should be best friends.
Probably, yeah.
Her novel is fantastic. It's Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez.
Book 4.
I'm cheating. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yep. I'm cheating because I wanted to talk about a graphic novel and I had a whole lot of candidates. It is not hard to find representation of New York City in comic form. A good place to start would be Will Eisner. He was an early cartoonist, started in the 1930s or so. He coined the term graphic novel in the 70s to describe one of his works. He's probably most famous for a character called the Spirit, who was a charming masked rogue who fought crime. While Eisner's storytelling is a little dated and heavy-handed these days, his illustrations of mid-century New York are just gorgeous. Eisner's pages and his inking and his lettering, they're just so pretty. And one of the top prizes in comics is named after him for reasons.
If you wanted to read a novel around that time too, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon is a beautiful book.
Yes.
I talked about it in our Prague episode, but I could just have easily have talked about it in this show.
Yeah. There's also almost every New Yorker cartoonist and cover ever. Roz Chaz has a book called Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, which is full of New York angst and is also a fantastic book about aging. I love George Booth and his crowded apartments and his manic bull terriers. There's also the famous cover of How a New Yorker Views the World by Saul Steinberg. And I realized the other day that my relationship with New York City may have started with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, the guys who invented the Fantastic Four and sort of formed Marvel Comics. They presented a city with larger-than-life characters and mighty world-changing possibilities and lots of tough-talking locals who weren't afraid to step up all against a kinetic and unstoppable cityscape, and where's the lie? But today I wanted to talk about two other graphic novels. Both of these are more recent. The first is Hello, NY, an illustrated love letter to the 5 boroughs by Julia Rothman. Her work has a grown-up and sophisticated but still cartoonish look to it. Her drawings are friendly and welcoming. The New York Times called her when they wanted to do a Sunday piece about dogs in the city. Like, that probably gives you an idea. Her book is a love letter to her home. She grew up on City Island, which is a small island up in the Bronx. She describes what that was like and directs the reader to a good place to get shrimp and chips on the island. And then the rest of the book is just like walking around town with her. She talks about her favorite places and tells little stories about them and suggests what you might want to do or eat. She stops by the public library and talks to a librarian in the rare book division. She has a list of treasures she would want to take home from the Met and how she would display them, which is a great game. Some places she visits are massive, like the Met, and others are small and personal, and they'd be easy to overlook. Rothman introduced me to 2 places that I absolutely want to visit the next time I'm in New York. One of them is the Campbell Apartment in Grand Central Station. It is a very swanky bar hidden in a train station.
Cool.
Yeah. It used to be the office of a fat cat wealthy guy, and it is now a cocktail lounge with restored 1920s details and a hand-painted ceiling and an enormous fireplace.
That sounds great.
Yeah. We'll point to their site in our notes. The other place on my must list is Moscot. They're an eyeglasses store that specializes in classic styles. I looked them up online. They are exactly the frames I've been drawn to my entire life, and I can't wait to visit them. It's one of those places where I'm like, how did I not know about this place? Yeah. Why didn't somebody say something? They have 23 locations all over the world and a robust site if you're interested. The other graphic novel I wanted to mention quickly is Roaming by Jillian and Mariko Tamaki. This is the story of 3 young women, maybe freshmen in college, who come to the city for a long weekend. It's their first adult vacation. The book does a brilliant job of capturing that age against the city. It is the age of the significant hair flip, right? It's the age where something happens to one of your friends sort of off stage for you, but you don't have the maturity to follow up, so it remains a mystery, even though maybe it shouldn't. You just don't have the tools yet to talk about that. There is a very particular hot mess in this story that revolves around that age and a love triangle and being in the city for the first time. The authors are 2 of my favorite cartoonists working today. They did This One Summer, which is a beautiful, evocative piece of work about being a young teen. It won the Caldecott and an Eisner. This work is equally lovely, just a few years older. The book is Roaming by Jillian and Mariko Tamaki. The first book I talked about was Hello, NY by Julia Rothman.
Here's book 5.
My final recommendation is Table for Two, Fictions by Amor Towles. I have a mildly tetchy relationship with short stories.
Touchy?
Tetchy.
Tetchy. What's tetchy?
Just what it sounds like.
Okay. It sounds a little annoyed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like a good spooky short story.
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe got his hooks in me early.
Yeah.
But I can get really frustrated with collections of literary stories.
Okay.
Although something you said recently, Dave, helped a lot.
What was that?
I was complaining that a story I read had a great setup and good characters and a vivid setting, and then it felt like nothing happened.
Right.
And you said, sometimes a short story is like a piece of dark chocolate. You just kind of enjoy letting it sit on your tongue.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. That was brilliant.
Okay.
Because it changed how I think about approaching short stories.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a little yum.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to Amor Towles' new book. I really liked his first one, Rules of Civility. If you haven't read it, that's a novel about the adventures of a young woman in 1930s Manhattan. Would also have been great for this episode of the show.
Yep.
His second, A Gentleman in Moscow, is one of my all-time favorite books.
Same.
That's about a count placed under house arrest at the fancy Metropole Hotel in Moscow after the Russian Revolution.
Yep.
So I was thrilled when I learned that Amor Towles announced he was writing another book.
Yeah.
And then, don't judge me, I was kind of bummed when I found out it was a collection of short stories.
I understand that, yeah.
But I should have known it would be great because he's great. He's such a good storyteller.
Well, and that doesn't always translate, right? A great novelist is not necessarily a great short story writer, and vice versa.
That's true. Here's what I have to say, headline about this book.
Okay.
These stories are like mini novels. They are very rich and very satisfying. It's kind of cool because if you don't have the time to reread A Gentleman in Moscow, even though it's your favorite book, you can get a little taste of Amor Towles by reading these stories.
Right.
And they fit in between other things that you're doing.
One of the pieces of advice I got recently was don't read a short story collection in one go. Break it up and put it between other things that you're reading, and that resonated with me.
Yeah, that's also a really good piece of advice. Table for Two is comprised of 6 stories, all set in New York during different time periods. Each one of them is completely immersive and filled with rich characters and really satisfying plot turns. Like you think you know where it's going and then you're wrong, and it's great. They kind of gave me the serotonin boost of his novels without the lengthy commitment.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the book is a novella, and it's a noirish sequel to Rules of Civility, and explains what happens when the heroine, Evelyn, leaves New York City on a train and gets off in Los Angeles.
Yeah, we see her leave in Rules of Civility.
Yes.
But we don't know what happens to her until now. Yeah.
But we're here to talk about the New York stories.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm going to focus on.
All right.
They're a celebration of the kind of old school characters you can only find in New York.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this when you were talking about shop sins.
Yeah.
And the locations for the stories are the greatest hits of the city. Central Park, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Carnegie Hall, fancy hotels, social clubs. And taken together, they kind of talk to each other. They're a love letter to the serendipity and coincidence and quirks of fate that bring together disparate people. So this huge, sprawling metropolis of New York kind of shrinks down to a human scale, which is exactly what happens when you go to New York. You go in a neighborhood and it feels like a small town.
That was my experience living there as well. Is I had my neighborhood, 2 neighborhoods over. I'm not going there.
Yeah.
That's 2 neighborhoods over. I got my stuff.
The first story is called The Line. It starts in a Russian village during the last days of the Tsar. I was not expecting that because I knew the stories were set in New York.
Yeah.
It just starts there. And in hindsight, it was a really good way to start the collection because it demonstrates how New York is New York because so many New Yorkers start somewhere else. The Russian people who emigrated to New York during the 19th century changed the personality of the city.
Right.
And each one of them has their own story.
Yeah.
The hero of this pastiche, it has a 19th century tone in the way the story is told, is Pushkin. And he is a remarkably good-natured, friendly man who gently bumbles his way to good fortune. And he does that by waiting in lines. It's like if Kafka wrote a cheerful story. He just has these interactions waiting and standing in a succession of lines and suddenly finds himself with this whole new life.
Okay.
Another one that I really enjoyed is called The Ballad of Timothy Touchette. And that one starts at the New York Public Library. I want to read you the first paragraph because it really hooked me and made me want to read more. And if you kind of unpack this paragraph, it's stunning how much Amor Towles is telling you about the character just in these couple of sentences.
Okay.
A few years before the end of the millennium, one Timothy Touchette sat in the main reading room of the New York Public Library's Fifth Avenue branch with a copy of Maxwell Perkins' collected letters before him. What had brought this young man from the suburbs of Boston to such a majestic spot on a sunlit afternoon? Better yet, what had brought him to New York in the first place? Quite simply, his determination since childhood to become a celebrated novelist. I like the specificity of it. He's got this particular book in front of him.
Yeah.
It's a sunny day, but he's in the library.
Right.
He's been determined since childhood to be a celebrated novelist.
Not necessarily a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the hints about what might happen are there. Soon, Timothy has a momentous run-in with a gentleman named Peter Pennybrook, who is a purveyor of used and rare editions. He's the platonic ideal of a tweedy, rare books dealer in New York City. Like maybe he smells like dust.
Yeah.
And he takes Timothy on an unexpected adventure. Amor Towles is a little bit tricksy. He sets up expectations and then turns the story into something else entirely. There's one called Hasta Luego that starts off like a riff on the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I was like, oh, he's just riffing on planes, trains, and automobiles. Right. And then, wrong. No, he's not. I got it all wrong.
Okay.
Another one is called I Will Survive. And it starts out kind of light and bubbly rom-com vibes. And then you realize it's a story about the end of a marriage. But the reason that they're breaking up was heartbreaking and also weirdly delightful. There were so many surprises in that story. And it's got this kind of quirky tone to it. It was so good.
That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, I don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All of the stories are like a bite-sized opportunity to roam around in Amor Towles' imagination and these little worlds he's created from the raw materials of New York. And I loved it. And I feel like it's a little present because I can take half an hour and read one of the stories when I have a break, which is really fun. It's Table for Two Fictions by Amor Towles.
Those are 5 books we love set in New York City. Visit our show notes at strongsenseofplace.com for links and details. We will give you directions to my new favorite eyeglasses shop, or you can get tickets for Books and Burlesque.
I have a very lengthy list of links from my 101 today. The show notes is going to be rich with good stuff. Pop on over.
Yeah. And don't forget to drop by our new Substack, where you will meet other brilliant, attractive, well-read listeners like you.
From what I understand, if you participate in the Tuesday tea posts, your skin looks amazing.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
You will find smoother skin and brighter teeth and probably beautiful glossy hair at strongsenseofplace.com/Substack. Mel, where are we headed for our next episode?
By popular demand from our patrons, we are going to India.
Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey folks, we're the hosts of Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, a reader, writer, liver, and breather of comic books.
And I'm Nat. I used to know absolutely nothing about comics, but now...
So actually, I've got a quiz for you.
I still have a lot to learn about comics.
Thank you. On Comic Sans, I make Nat read some of my favorite works in the medium, including Saga, Daredevil, and the Flintstones.
And Yen talks about what makes that comic special. Sometimes it's a story, sometimes it's...
Paneling, gutters, page turns, colorings, lettering, semiotics, juxtaposition...
Okay, Professor, save it for the episodes.
You can listen to Comic Sans on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can binge our first 2 seasons. That's over 20 episodes on 20 different comics.
And we just launched Season 3, new episodes every 2 weeks.